Hi everybody, this is Steve Ludwig, host of Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture and the Beatles Hour with Steve Ludwig on planetludwig.com. Here's an interview we did with Ed Rudy, the only news reporter to cover the entire Beatles' 1964 visit. It was recorded on February 11th, 2014, show number 27. If you'd like to hear the whole show, please go to planetludwig.com and just find it in the menu. And now, please enjoy the interview.
This is John Lennon saying this is the top complete behind-the-scenes coverage of the Beatles in America by the fifth Beatle, Ed Rudy. This is one of the original four Beatles, John Lennon, saying thank you for the wonderful reception we've received in the United States, and stay tuned for Ed Rudy's reports and as we tour the States. Okay, Ed.
This is George Harrison of the Beatles saying stay tuned for Ed Rudy's exclusive coverage of our American tour. Paul McCartney of the Beatles saying stay tuned for Ed Rudy's exclusive coverage of our American tour.
One of the prime reasons the Beatles came to America was to appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that again was a complete victory. The show received its highest ratings ever. While in New York, they managed to dine at the Posh 21 Club, go twisting at the Peppermint Lounge, and tour Greenwich Village and rented Hertz limousines. They also enjoyed the attention of the bunnies at the Playboy Club. During a break in the schedule, Radio Pulsebeat News microphones were on hand as we spoke with Beatle road manager Malcolm Evans. Have you been down to the Peppermint Lounge yet?
I haven't been down, the boys have been.
Yeah, I know that they were there, and I know that they met a couple of young ladies there. One of the fellows was telling me. They haven't actually had any chance to develop any real friendships with gals since they've been in New York, or since they've been in America, really, have they?
Oh, no. Life's been a bit too hectic since they've been here with press conferences, photograph sessions, and we're not rehearsing for shows and traveling, We don't get much time for romance.
The Washington, D.C. Coliseum booked the Beatles for a one-night stand in the indoor stadium. They went down by train, and reaction at Union Station was so fantastic that our audio transmission equipment was smashed as we made the following narration. We're going through Union Station now with the Beatle party. There are thousands, literally thousands and thousands of teenagers, and they're mobbing the whole party. The police are being perhaps a little unnecessarily rough. Not with the teenagers, but with the members of the official Beatle party, including Washington and New York press. We're walking under a sign saying, "Welcome Beatles to Washington." Must be about 5 feet high and 20 feet across. It was at this point that our broadcast lines broke. In any case, it was a sellout performance at the Washington Coliseum long before the actual performance. 9,000 Beatlemania-afflicted fans screamed and stamped so loud and for so long that the din was indescribable.
Try and play it cool. What normally happens is that when sort of the girls are screaming, people notice it more. I think, that it's a different kind of audience reaction to the one you normally get. So everybody sort of points this out more. But it definitely helps to swing a show along if the audience is going like it was last night. We enjoy it, it's just, I don't know, it's the young people's way of showing their appreciation. We love it.
Ed Sullivan gets credit for much of the popularity of the Beatles because of their exposure on his show. We asked Ed how he accounted for their success.
Well, it's a better beat. It's Dick Rogers. I asked Dick that the other day. I thought it was, like the Negro spirituals. Dick Rogers said it's hillbilly with an English accent. But he said the beat is very, very excellent in it.
And would you say that that's the reason for their success? The fact they're English youngsters doing American music?
No, they're very attractive and they're nice. They don't do anything that's offensive. And they're darn good singers.
Joining Ed Sullivan in Beatle accolades we interviewed Mrs. Happy Rockefeller, wife of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, after another Beatle concert.
Miss Rockefeller, what did you think of the show?
I thought they were wonderful.
And so we find Beatle fans among the high and mighty, as well as throughout the teenage population of the world. This is Ed Rudy reporting on Beatlemania, USA.
I've just heard audio of the incredible journey that our next guest has taken. Mr. Ed Rudy was the only American reporter who traveled with the Beatles on the first full American tour. And what we just heard was John, Paul, and George, and Mal Evans. And tonight, February 11th, marking the 50th anniversary of the Washington, D.C. concert, Mr. Ed Rudy was there all the way. Mr. Ed Rudy, thank you for joining us.
I thank you for having me, Steve.
It's a pleasure.
It was an incredible journey, and it was certainly it changed the world, and it was life-changing for me personally.
Oh, my goodness, I can imagine. I'd like to go through it with you. And before we even get started, everyone, please visit edrudy.com because Ed has 2 amazing CDs available of all of his interviews with the Beatles and the Beatles entourage. You know what else, Ed, I love about your CDs is that you really got into the fans too. I mean, you got the reactions, and it takes us right back to that time. Yes,
well, we were, it was not the first time we've covered events or we were. I keep saying we. I was a newsman, and the news was the event as much as it was the Beatles, and the fans were part of the event.
Oh, were they ever? As we heard, as we entered the interview, my goodness. And now, Ed, I will preface this by saying I have trouble remembering what I had for breakfast. So any questions I ask you about 50 years ago, you're certainly forgiven if you can't recall. But what can you recall about the Washington, D.C. Concert, being its 50th anniversary is this evening, February 11th?
Okay, let's see. I remember that. I remember the concert itself. Of course, it was in an unusual arena. I think it was usually used for boxing or wrestling matches. Probably the first time it was ever used for a musical event. The setup was not great for music. They didn't have great audio equipment or anything like that. I remember being backstage and what was the kid's name? There was another act on with him.
Tommy Rowe?
No. Bobby Rowe.
Yes. Chris Montez?
No.
Okay.
I won't tell you if they weren't on, but I was having. Jesus, what the heck was his name? He's actually still around and still does quite well. Black.
Well, at 3 a.m, Ed, you're going to sit up in your bed and say, "Oh, I just remembered him."
Oh, okay, all right, okay. He's still a well-known act.
Okay.
Just nice young man at that time. I guess now he's a nice old man.
Yeah. Now, actually, let's go way back. You had met Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, months before the Beatles came to America. Is that correct?
Well, I'll have to correct you there. Yes, I had met him, but I was always very careful to call him Brian Epstein because when I first met him, I called him Epstein. He corrected me, and so I never did that again.
Epstein is...
Epstein,
okay.
Yes.
What do you have any recollections of dealing with him?
Yeah, well, I met him, a friend of mine, Bud Hellwell, who was a record promotion man. I was a disc jockey, and prior to that time, and he used to come up and promote various records. And he was a friend of mine, nice guy. And he came up and he asked me, "What are you doing this afternoon?" I said, "Well, I'm finishing up the studio." He says, "I'm going to meet some guy who's got a group that he thinks is going to be tremendous, and he just hired me to do their American promotion. Would you like to come with me to meet him?" And I said, "Okay, after lunch or before lunch, I can't really recall it now." And we went over to Park Avenue.
The Plaza
Hotel. I think the Regency Hotel on Park Avenue. And we met Brian Epstein. And he told us about the Beatles. He was very enthused about them. I had never heard of them before. But, you know, I was polite, of course, and told him I'd be very interested in send me a disc, and I'll see what I can do. And then when I got back to my news studio, I was working for INS Radio News and Radio Upholstery News, and we sold news broadcasts nationally, the audio for it. And we started getting calls from stations around the country asking us if we were going to cover the Beatles when they came to this country. Not the same day, but, you know, within a couple of weeks. And my news director came to me, said, "Do you know these guys?" I said, yeah, I bet Brian Epstein, and he told me about them. And so we put out a what we called an audio billboard out to all the stations, and 440 stations replied that they'd like to have coverage.
Wow.
So I thought, whoa, that's pretty good. So I was on my way to cover the Beatles.
Now, Ed, what were your impressions of each of them individually, John, Paul, George, and Ringo? Did they fit their public image, what we seem to, or is there something about them that stood out? They were definitely four different entities. Is that what you remember about?
Actually, there were four different entities, and they were all the same except for Ringo. Ringo was always different.
In what way?
Ringo, I was about to say Ringo didn't fit, but it wasn't that he didn't fit, but he was shorter, he was the newest guy, he was the oldest guy, and he was more talkative than they were.
Interesting.
You know, John, of course, was the guy who spoke up in front of groups. He was the spokesman for the group. He was absolutely the leader. Paul was the pretty Beatle, which everyone called him, and that's what he was. Kind of quiet, kind of shy, but very good looking. George was very, very young. I think he was 19 years old at the time, and very, very nice young man. Very, very friendly when not in public, but in public, very, very quiet.
Oh, yeah, very guarded or very quiet. Wow, how about
very
that?
Quiet. He was shy. He was shy. He was a young kid. 19 years old, all of a sudden he's world famous. What do you expect?
Yeah, can you imagine? Wow. So you would say undoubtedly at that time John was the leader, no doubt about it.
There was no doubt about it. Yeah. John formed the group. John was the leader of the group. No question about it. I don't think there was ever a time when John was not the leader of the group.
Now, could you take us through a typical day of covering the Beatles, if there's such a thing as quote-unquote typical? Like you guys would get up, would you have breakfast with them, like the whole entourage of reporters, or how did that work?
No. You didn't have breakfast with them. They had breakfast in the rooms.
Okay.
But you hung around. You waited to get called by Brian Sonville or one of the Beatles themselves, or you try to find out where they were going that day, and you chased them for the day. After a while, I got very friendly with Mal Evans, and Mal would give me a little advance info on where they were going, and I got friendlier with them, and so I was able to get in on the travels of the day. Very often the Beatles didn't know where they were going that day. They're only here a really short time.
Yeah, sure. I know from at least the interviews and things I saw with Mal Evans, the late Mal Evans, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
I think if Mal Evans said you were okay, if Ed Rudy was okay, the Beatles were okay with you because they really seemed to love Mal Evans.
Oh no, Mal Evans was he was like a bodyguard. They met him at the Cavern where he was a bouncer. He wasn't a bouncer type. He was very soft spoken. He was very tall. I'm 6'2". He was my size, and that's very tall for England.
True. Yes. Yeah.
And he accompanied them. He also had the Liverpudlian accent. And people at that time, people didn't know what John, Paul, George, and Ringo sounded like, and so a Liverpool accent was a Liverpool accent. Everybody who had one was one of the Beatles, and so when people heard his voice, they immediately thought Beatles.
Yeah, well, that's what's so valuable, Ed, about your CDs, the American tour with Ed Rudy. And once again, everyone, we're speaking with the legendary Ed Rudy. He was the only American reporter who traveled with the Beatles on the first full American tour. You interviewed Mal Evans.
Just because I believe in honesty. I wasn't the only American reporter who traveled with them. There were many, many reporters, but I was the only reporter who was a member of the entourage from the start to the finish.
The first full
many
American.
reporters gathered, went with us, or joined us at each stop. There were quite a number of
from the
European
newsreels, right. There were a few of you, right. But what I was going to say, what's valuable about, and people go to edrudy.com, please, you can get these CDs. I mean, you take us right after an event, you speak with the fans, you speak with Mal Evans. I guess when you look back at it, Ed, I'm sure you comprehend that this is a very important piece of history for all of us. These CDs that you've made available to us.
Yes, the truth is I didn't realize it at the time, but subsequently I came to realize it. I never knew exactly how life-changing and how world-changing the Beatles would be, but of course they have been.
Yeah, difficult question for you now. When you had spent some time with the Beatles during the tour, did you say, still in all, these guys are a flash in the pan, or did you say, these guys are kind of different from what I've ever seen? Tough to remember.
I think I'd rather give you John Lennon's reaction to that than my own. I remember John saying to me, I go to sleep and I start to think, not so many years ago I was little Johnny Lennon in Liverpool, and then all this happened, and it can go away any minute. And of course, it never did go away, and it was perennial. But nobody expected it to last as long as it did.
Yeah, for them to have the influence they did. But that's something, you, of course, would know this better than I, but things I've read, they never really took themselves too seriously either. Did you find that?
They wanted to have fun. They were under great constraint, great control. Brian Epstein was a marvelous manager, kept them in control. He had turned them from rockers, which were kind of rough-looking guys, into guys that looked like mods, and mods were really tough guys. But they were not. They just started wearing nice suits and nice uniforms, and he converted them. They behaved themselves with girls mostly. They stayed in line. They took themselves seriously. They felt they were confined. They thought they were in jail. They could hardly ever get out. Most of the world they saw was through the windows of cars or from hotel windows. They couldn't walk the streets.
Yeah, I can imagine. You just left yourself open there a second, Ed. You said they were nice to the girls mostly, but we aren't going to have to go into that.
No. They had a few visitors.
They're young men
that I could name, but I won't. In the hotel, but not many. Yeah. They were not really flamboyant in that way.
And I mean, for crying out loud, they were young men in America.
Young kids, really.
Young kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember where you were, Ed, when you heard of the terrible news of John Lennon's assassination?
Oh yeah, very, very much. I had been friends with John. I was friends with John more so than any of the other Beatles because he and I lived in New York, and so we were able to maintain a relationship. And yes, it was horrendous. I lived just across the park from where John lived. And,
is that right? So you stayed friends with John's way after the Beatles?
Oh yes. Through all the years.
What can you tell us about him post Beatles?
He loved New York. He was a regular guy. We used to go to a bar restaurant around the corner from where I lived on. I lived on 3rd Avenue, on 2nd Avenue, called My Brother's Place. And he'd go in, and people recognized him. But New Yorkers are very sophisticated. Are you in New York? I don't even know where I'm talking to.
No, I'm in New Jersey. You're
in New Jersey. Okay, close enough. But they're very sophisticated. They let you live and let live. He loved New York. He thought it was the greatest place in the world.
Yeah. How did you learn of his murder?
I can't tell you that. I remember being shocked, and I remember going over to Dakota right after, and there were crowds out there. I probably heard it on the news.
I think it's so great. I just assumed foolishly that after the 64 tour and 65 tour, you never had any contact with the Beatles.
No,
but you were a friend with John to the end. Wow, that is really
yeah, sure,
great.
Sure. We'd go shopping together. Shopping with, another friend of his, a singer. My memory is bad.
Join the club.
and we'd go into stores. People look and they glance, they smile, but they don't really bother you.
Yeah.
New Yorkers are good.
Yeah. Besides John, of the three Paul, George, and Ringo.
I didn't really have much contact with any of them.
Okay,
I saw. Let's see. I saw Paul once. I saw Ringo once at a concert. But no real contact.
How about at the time during the '64 tour? Paul, George, or Ringo, of those three, who were easiest to get along with? Ringo? You seem to intimate that.
George was the easiest, really. Ringo was the easiest to talk to, but George kind of sought out my company, and
oh, that's nice.
Yeah. But again, he was a kid all alone.
Yeah,
strange country.
Yeah. He was probably kind of a father figure or something to him in a way.
I
weren't that much older than him.
But certainly a much older brother. Yes,
couldn't have been that much older than him. Who was the funniest Beatle?
John by far. John was so clever, unbelievable. All of them are clever. All of them are very perspicacious. All of them are, terrific. But John by far was the most clever.
Not only the Beatles, everyone. I'd like you to know that Ed Rudy also covered the Dave Clark 5 and the Rolling Stones tours. Can we start first at the Dave Clark 5? But how are the Dave Clark 5 as compared to the Beatles? How about that?
The fact is, I did cover the Dave Clark 5, and I put out an album of interviews with them, and I did cover the Rolling Stones. I put out an album of interviews with them, but I didn't know any of them anywhere near as well as I knew the Beatles.
Will those albums ever be available someday?
I never put. Well, they've sold millions, of course, but
yeah.
But I haven't put them out as CDs. But I think I may. I've been getting a lot of calls for it lately. And I do have them. I have the rights to them. So perhaps we will put them out as CDs. Once
again, everyone, we're speaking with Ed Rudy. Go to edrudy.com. It's a really wonderful website, as a matter of fact. And what I also liked, Ed, was that as part of first of all, I had when it was a record album way back, I remember your commercials on the old Uncle Floyd show here in New Jersey.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Nice guy, funny guy.
Yeah, he sure is. And but what you also get, everyone, when you order the CDs is a really nice reproduction of the press pass that you had.
Yes. They were used on the for working press only,
right.
And it didn't entitle anyone to get into the to the concerts. But on the first and second tours, you were able to get into the to the press conferences that followed every tour. And of course, the press didn't really need pass to get into the conferences because the press pass would take you in.
Yeah,
but to get into the conference, you need a conference pass.
Yeah, and I'm holding it right now as I speak with you. It's a really wonderful reproduction of that press pass, everyone.
It's very rare, and
yeah,
they're interesting. I've seen a lot of them framed. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about, besides the Beatles and covering the DC-5 and the Rolling Stones, you were a part of many musical offerings. I'm thinking of the Eternals especially, but tell us about the other things that you were involved with music.
Okay, we produced with the Eternals was Rockin' in the Jungle and Babu's Wedding Day and Jesus, a bunch of records.
Blind Date was
so many years ago, and hit records. I did Who's That Knocking with the Genies, which was a very big hit. I had a lot of groups. Later on, I had the Liverpool Lads. There were I was in the rock and roll business.
Mm-hmm. We still have a few more minutes with Mr. Rudy, but we're going to hear Blind Date by the Eternals when we say goodbye. Not yet, but what can you tell us specifically about the Blind Date? I love the opening.
Oh, okay. The opening was interesting. We did the record, and something it didn't quite come out right. And I You remember the Big Bopper?
Of course, sure.
Okay. Big
Chantilly
Bopper was
lace, yep.
very, very big about that time. And I thought, Jesus, there's a great place here for a Big Bopper type thing. And so I said, no, wait a minute, Tarzan. I want you to meet your blind date. Say hello, babe. Then the Eternals came in. And it was good record and a good hit.
Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. We're going to hear in a couple of minutes, as a matter of fact. Was there ever a moment or two when, like an off-guard moment, Ed, that you remember with the Beatles when, I know that they were open to you and all, but was there ever a time when they really just kind of forgot that they were speaking with a reporter and you saw something really... What am I trying to say? I'm a great interviewer.
I know what you're saying. And yes, it was kind of, the reporters were them, and the Beatles and I, and the immediate group were us. And we talked about them, and they were the reporters, and we were the group. They were the outsiders who came to visit, and we were the ones who traveled together.
Yeah, boy,
I saw a lot of things. I heard a lot of things that probably other reporters were not privy to. One time I asked John, I hope I can remember it, I asked John if he asked me about an American joke, and I forget what I told him, but I told him some American joke, and he said, so that was pretty good. And I said, well, can you tell me a typical English joke? Not an American joke in an English accent, but an English joke. And he thought for a minute, he said, yes, he says, they sat down to dinner in this English kitchen, and the father came in and said, oh, no, the son came in, I'm sorry. The son came in and said, Dad, would you pass the butter? He says, it's not butter, it's butter. He says, all right, Dad, would you pass the butter? He says, that's better. I guess you have to be English to
no, but you did the accent well. But that is a typical, I guess, what they call a Liverpudlian humor. It's
British anyway. Yes.
Yeah. Well, as we say goodbye, Ed, first of all, I want to thank you. It really has been a pleasure speaking with you. And like I said, I've had your album when it first came out. My goodness, back, I guess, in the 80s, maybe late 70s. I forget exactly when. And I always know the name Ed Rudy, and it's been such a pleasure to get a chance to speak with you. You're really one of the very important people in especially the early Beatles lore, and I'm so happy that you gave us the time tonight.
Steve, I'm very, very pleased to be with you. I just became one of your fans, and from now on, I'm a Steve Ludwig fan.
Well, right back at you, Mr. Rudy, because I've been an Ed Rudy fan for many, many years. And as we say goodbye, the first person you're going to hear on the Eternals Blind Date is our guest, Ed Rudy. And once again, Ed, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Now, wait a minute. Tarzan, I want you to meet your blind date. I know what you like. Say hello, baby.
What is it? Oh yeah, what is it? Oh no, get me door shaped like ball. We'll make it out, turn it up, boy. What is it? Oh yeah, what is it? Oh no, never again would I go on a blind date. Never again, never again. One of these days I might meet up with a monster like her, like her. What could I do? Oh, what could I say? Supper boy, supper maid, looking tall, shaped like a ball. Look at her go on the rock and roll. Go, go, Fanny, go, go, go. She don't dance, she don't go. Oh, what a shame to be out with a large day. Like her, like her. Oh, I froze at the side of the blind day. It was pale.